The name KAWS just comes from when I started doing graffiti, and I was thinking of lettering and KAWS, sort of 4 letters that I like and the way they interact with each other. And then later I just chose to keep it. I mean, the work I make now has pretty much nothing to do with the graffiti I was doing, but I think with keeping a name KAWS, you just have the work and that's it, and then you have to think about everything from there. I started going to Japan in the mid-90s, and I met a lot of interesting young guys who were super ambitious and creative, and they were very much involved in like streetwear and fashion, and so they had their companies, and slowly those have grown. And I was doing collaborations with these different companies that I liked, like Supreme or Bathing Ape, Undercover, Comme des Garçons, and slowly I kind of worked with everyone I wanted to, so the next logical step seemed to be open a shop. I think, when I was younger, it probably a lot to do with skating and sort of the products that came along with that, like t-shirts and, stickers and boards and graphics. And I just loved that kind of thing. And, as a kid, for me, that really kind of got my mind open. It wasn't going to galleries and museums, that world was like a different world that I knew existed, but I hardly touched. So it was mostly magazines and objects and things. Actually, I should tell you, when I started Original Fake, the store in Tokyo, is part of the reason why I started that store, is to design the shop with Kariyama. Because I just loved his, my first trips to Japan, going to his spaces and seeing all the retail stores that he's done, and then becoming friends, and he's just one of the best people I've met in Japan. So I really just started the store as a way of doing this collaborative space with him. And then I was like, oh shit, I have a store and now I have to make product. I was always interested in sculpture, and then making a toy was sort of like an accessible way of doing that. I never kind of imagined that I'd have an opportunity to make large pieces or life size or larger. So instead of doing the monumental piece, I went for the edition. So I made 500 instead of making one big one. And that kind of opened, I kind of control the production and the sales. And once I made one and got the sales from that, I could make 2. And then from there, I could make 6. And then and it just sort of over the last, 14 so years, kind of developed into where I'm at now. When I opened my store, I kind of was like, oh, forget art world, forget galleries. Because, a lot of times I was making these paintings, but I also, very interested in making product. And in the 90s, there was a sort of a taboo between, oh, this is commercial, you can either be a fine artist or you can be a commercial artist. So I just was like, oh, forget it, I'll just do what I like to do and kind of let the chips fall where they do. And then slowly the climate's changed and things have sort of opened up. All along I have had some opportunities to exhibit, but never really anything until like maybe 2008 was when the first exhibit in New York happened again, and then from there it's kind of like opportunities have snowballed. The sculptures at Mary Boone are based off a character companion that I started, in the late 90s when I did my first toy, and he's sort of come through many different formations. And I don't know, I would say that maybe the sculptures at Mary's are more about like maybe the human condition and sort of this despair. It's like these characters, but they have human emotions. I mean, scale's another tool. It's another thing. It's just like the medium you choose to work in, the scale you choose to work. I spent so much time making these sort of small works, and then, you take the same work that you're making small and you shift the scale, and then suddenly you change the dynamic between the viewer and the work. So, whereas like somebody could hold something in their hand at one point, this can probably now hold you. So it's, I think it's interesting to change the scale a lot. These sculptures are in wood. I had made some smaller wood sculptures like around 2005 and then again in 2010. And then we figured out how to make, these monumental ones. And so suddenly there's this, sculpture that's the size of a building, and You know, you need engineers to work with you on it. It weighs 14 tons. I mean, Companion is a character that I've reworked through many formations. When he was in the Macy's parade, it was just sort of taking something that I've been working with for, you know, a decade now, and sort of putting it, it was the first time I made a balloon, and to see it sort of in the context of Macy's, which I grew up watching, you know, being in such close proximity. You know, you just see this parade when you're little, and it's also in a lineup with all the characters I grew up on. It was sort of a surreal, you know, environment. Like, I wouldn't make a balloon just to make a balloon. Like, to make a balloon and have it in that context was the perfect outlet, I thought. There's really no difference between the two worlds, you know. It's just making work, it's making paintings. You know, I never really, when I was doing graffiti, I never considered myself like a graffiti artist. You know, at the same time I was doing that, I was in college, I was doing realist oil painting and looking at like Bouguereau and Sargent and Jerome. And so it's, you know, I was always interested in all kinds of art. I never really kind of pigeonholed myself into one focal point. And now when I work, you know, I work sort of graphic and in a cartoon style, but what I'm thinking about is everything. Just do it all. I mean, just try to do, you know, do what interests you, you know. There's some times where I feel like I want to make a toy, and, you know, I love the way things, you know, I can meet young kids, or they can walk into a show, and they're already well versed in the work. They already had, you know, toys on their shelves for 10 years. And it's just, I think it's an amazing way of sort of reaching people and, you know, existing on a sort of accessible level.